Hello everyone, this is Brian. This is part 2 of my post about the Indiana State Fair Sugarland concert tragedy that happened here in Indianapolis on Saturday night. Part 2 is probably going to ruffle a few feathers, probably offend a few of you, because I'm going to talk about God and his role in tragedies such as this, or lack thereof. Before I get into that, I want to give you a little background on myself and my religious views. I don't want to go too deep into it. That's probably best saved for another post. But by way of brief background, when I was very young, I attended private Christian school from 1st through the 8th grade. My mother took us to church a lot. I went to various churches in the southern Indiana and northern Kentucky area, including Pentecostal and charismatic churches. So I have seen the most zealous and fanatical of Christians. I myself have been a very zealous and fanatical Christian. But as I grew older, especially after I went into public school in the 9th grade and as I became an adult, I really began to study the world and the universe, various schools of thoughts, theories, and philosophies on the universe. And my train of thought became less oriented toward the supernatural or God-centered explanation of things and more toward a rational, scientific explanation of things. Especially in the last 150 years of science and archaeology and other things, it's really pointed more toward this type of scientific explanation as opposed to a supernatural explanation of things. I don't like labels, but some would describe me as agnostic or an atheist. There is one label I will admit to, however, and that is anti-religion. I'm not knocking you if you're spiritual, but I do feel that organized religion and the various forms of organized religion throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, have been a cancer on humanity. Have been a cancer on humanity that has prevented the progress of mankind. I feel organized religion has done much more harm than good. How I feel about God himself, while I won't go so far as to say there is no God, I will say that I don't believe in him because I don't believe in things that I cannot rationally, scientifically, objectively prove. And I feel that the so-called proof of the existence of God has far short of an acceptable level for me. So while I don't say that there is no God, that there's not something out there that you call it God or a higher power, I fail to be convinced emphatically of his existence. I feel that just because you don't understand why something is a certain way doesn't mean that it has to be God. Just because you don't understand why something is the way it is, how it works, doesn't mean it's God. It just means you don't have the answer yet. There have been many instances throughout history where people did not understand why things worked a certain way, and they credited it to God. And we have since discovered that these things are explainable. So I would encourage you to keep an open mind. And if things come up that disagree with what you were taught in Sunday school, what you were taught in church, what your Bible teaches you, keep an open mind toward the things of science. Keep an open mind that perhaps it's not science that's wrong. Perhaps it's religion that has led you astray. Now, how does this relate to the Sugarland tragedy? Well, last night when I was reading various comments on Facebook, I saw a post from a local news anchor commenting on this tragedy and saying that God is in control. Now, before I go any further, of course my thoughts are with the victims and their families, and I send them all my love and all my positive thoughts for whatever good that'll do. And I'm not knocking you if you pray. I know that sometimes people feel that they need to do things like that to sort of give themselves the feeling that they're doing something. People just can't seem to accept that they can't do anything. They feel like they have to do something. So I'm not trying to knock you if you pray, but I do admit that the whole God is in control comment, and I've seen that comment more than once, perplexes me. See, I don't believe in God, so I don't give him credit for or blame him for anything. But you who believe in God, if he really was in control, don't you have to ask yourself, why didn't he prevent this from happening in the first place? A God who could wrap his loving arms around his creations, who is supposedly all-knowing and all-powerful, who failed to act to prevent this tragedy, is neither loving nor benevolent, in my opinion. I know many of you are going to say that God works in mysterious ways, or it's all in God's plan, but to me that's just an easy cop-out. Again, I don't want to knock you if you pray, but I guess I just don't understand the point. Because if God exists, and he was not persuaded to prevent this tragedy from happening in the first place, what would make you think that he would bother to intervene now on the victim's behalf? See, I don't have to ponder these questions. I don't have to wonder why God didn't prevent this from happening, because I don't believe such a being exists to prevent this from happening. To me, this type of tragedy is truly evidence of a random universe in which tragedy happens to all different kinds of people, Christian and non-Christian. But I do find it amazing that there will always be people who will always look on the bright side of things with God. A friend of mine posted on Facebook giving God credit for the fact that more people weren't killed. To me, that logic is kind of weird. 5 people died, but hey, look at all the people that didn't die. They never seem to question why their God simply didn't prevent the tragedy to begin with. They don't seem to question why 5 people had to die. They just give God the credit that more people didn't die. The person who posted this is a very nice lady. About 10 years ago, she was in a really bad car accident. She credits God with why she lived. And I can kind of understand why she would feel that way, but looking at it objectively, for everyone who survives an accident, there are people who die, who become horribly disfigured, who become vegetables, Christian and non-Christian. To me, that is evidence of a random universe. Not that God is intervening on behalf of people who supposedly believe in the right religion. If tragedy and death occurred less frequently to people of certain religious beliefs, I might be persuaded, but statistically, Christians and non-Christians suffer suffer tragedy and death to the same degree, experience happiness to the same degree. Where does God fit in all of this? Seems like God is in a can't-lose proposition with religious people. If they live through a tragedy, God saved them. If they die or are disfigured, it's all in God's plan. Any way you slice it, whatever the outcome, God is never criticized, only praised. Personal experience. When I was 7 years old, my mother, me, and my brother were on our way to church. Christmas Eve. A man turned left in front of us, suddenly. My mother slammed on the brakes, swerved, and that sent us careening into a ditch. All of us suffered broken bones. I was hurt the least. My mother had some cuts on her face. My brother was hurt the worst, though. He hit his head so hard that he was in a coma for 7 weeks. When he got out of the coma, he had to relearn how to walk and how to talk. To this day, he still has a bad stuttering problem. And I really don't think he ever mentally completely recovered. Just think of it. If we were atheists, if we had not been going to church that day, this would not have happened to us. Where was the loving God? Where was our guardian angel to prevent such a horrible thing from happening? See, I used to wonder that all the time. I don't anymore because I don't believe that there is a God to prevent this from happening. See, I believe in the randomness of the universe. I don't look at it as fair or unfair. It's merely random. Good things happen, bad things happen, but whichever religious belief you subscribe to is not going to increase your odds of having good things happen to you or decrease your odds from having bad things happen. In the end, the Sugarland tragedy is a really good example of the randomness of the universe. There were children at this event. There were elderly people, Christians and non-Christians. This was a family event. This was a concert for a band that has music that is sometimes G-rated, in my opinion. At the most, you could say PG-rated. This was a wholesome family event. But yet, this type of horrible tragedy still occurred. It really tells me that rather than ask, why didn't God do this? Or why didn't God do that? Maybe the question you should ask is, was there even a God there to do anything in the first place? Again, I fall short of saying there is no God. But the quantum of proof is not met in my eyes. Things like this don't go toward proving the existence of a loving, benevolent, kind, protective God. To me, it is evidence of a really random universe in which bad things happen and good things happen. Well, that's it for me for now. If you like this video, favorite it. If you like my channel, subscribe. Feel free to pass this around. Remember, you have well-reasoned, thoughtful, constructive arguments to make for or against. I welcome your comments. Personal insults will not be welcomed. They will be deleted. Thank you for listening. I will post on a different subject sometime in the future. Politics, religion, music, who knows, whatever inspires me. Until then, thanks for listening. Have a good rest of the week. See you soon.